Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Ikarus by the band Ikarus.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So this is actually Ikarus written with a K when usually the name is written with a C. And yeah, I just wanted to point that out. By the way guys, I'm still in Germany. I'm still listening to great progressive rock music in the night of the Prague festival, so I'm really having a good time, and hopefully you're having a good time watching these videos as well. And if I have enough battery on my phone, I'll definitely read your comments, but if I don't, that's probably the reason why I haven't been replying for a while, because I probably don't have a power charger or an outlet to use. But you don't care about that, you care about the album, so here are some of my favorite bits from this album. So the origins of this German band that we are reviewing today are actually quite early and not well known. So in 1966, a band formed in Germany, probably in Hamburg, but I can't say that for sure, and that band's name was Boutique Incorporation. These guys created and played music that was heavily inspired by the biggest artists at the time, including Elvis Presley and Tom Jones. But these guys also had a bit of tinge of blues in their music as well. And sometime in the late 60s or very early 70s, these guys actually won a competition that granted them a place in the Pop and Blues Festival of 1970. The band, excited by the chance for a breakthrough, actually wanted to reinvent themselves, so they changed their band name to Ikarus, and they actually added 4 new members to the band with a much more prog-minded approach, which made the sound for the band shift from the type of blues they were playing to a more progressive rock dominated sound. And you know we love progressive rock on the series, so I'm really happy with that change. Now Ikarus is a name that comes time and time again in progressive rock culture, and it was bound to happen that one day a band would actually call themselves just that. But these guys, they didn't just name their band Ikarus, they actually went full-fledged out and actually called their debut and only album Ikarus as well. And the thing is, which is quite unfortunate, it seems like these guys, well, they flew too close to the sun, because after only one album released, they disbanded, going on their separate ways and leaving us to think what might a second album by Ikarus have sounded like. And as for this album itself, well, I've read some pretty varied opinions about it. Some people saying that this is an excellent progressive rock album, and some people saying that it just features nothing new about it. And well, objectively, I can agree with both of these opinions. As I personally see it, this album, well, it features nothing new. There is nothing groundbreaking about it. It's pretty standard prog, as prog can get, of course. But on that same note, it is really good standard prog. And despite not being anything out of the ordinary, it is very well made and very fun to listen to, of course, in my subjective opinion. And everything that I'm gonna say is gonna sound pretty basic, but I think that the strong point for this sextet is the fact that they can write really good rhythm sections and put some really interesting melodies on top of them and create some things that are quite repetitive, but also contrast them with very varied and changing parts. The one thing I would mention is that the vocals aren't that well defined or very special. They aren't actually accented as I would have expected from a German band, but I don't know, they're just not that interesting, but this flaw definitely dwarfs when being compared to the rest of this album. Personally, I think that the real star of this show here is the bassist called Wolfgang Kracht. Now, this dude, he is amazing. Despite having a very rich and deep bass tone, he also plays very innovatively and he is always very omnipresent. It has been a while since I've heard this type of a very fluid bass playing. It seems like this dude just always has a very set groove for each section, but at the same time he makes so many variations on that particular groove that you can't quite discern what the original reference is. And you know, I've come to learn that whenever I do get stuck on one specific player in the band and I really love what they're doing, I try and, you know, take a step back and listen to everyone else, seeing if I'm missing anyone because I'm so obsessed with one particular instrument. And while in the case of this album I enjoyed everyone, the guitars were nice but they were kind of laid in the background, and the keyboards were also cool and they got their very interesting parts, I just couldn't help myself to think that the bass on here just is exquisite, and I'm sure that any bass player would love to jam to this album. But definitely as a whole, this album is one that makes use of all the tried and tested methods of creating a good progressive rock album. But as I've seen so far on this list, even that is a pretty daunting task for a lot of bands, and thus I can really appreciate what Ikarus are doing on here. And one thing that is very interesting and very impressive about this album is just how well realized and defined it is. Considering the fact that this year is 1971, prog didn't quite reach the landmarks that it is known up until today. They have a really good progressive rock sound that really seems to emphasize just what in its essence prog should sound like. Of course it doesn't have to, but that's what we've created for ourselves, and that's what these guys are doing, as well as also being a debut album, which usually are very not realized, but for a band like this I was definitely surprised to hear what they were doing on here. And for anyone here that has a grudge with bands like these that go for the tried and tested methods of creating progressive rock, don't be too hard on them. If the music is good, then what's the matter? It's good. And if it's not, it's fine. And I do get why people wouldn't like this album. Maybe it's just too progressively basic for them. Of course, that being in its essence an oxymoron, but I can get your point of view. But in my personal opinion, I was really impressed by what these guys have brought forth here. So for this cover, I think that the band or the designer for this cover really got the message they wanted to portray, but I just don't think that the way they actually made this drawing was the best way to go with it. Maybe one of the reasons for this album not taking off has to be the fact that it has a cover that looks like this. I'm sorry to say this, but if I saw this in a record shop store, I wouldn't go ahead and pick this one up for its cover. It's not that interesting, there's nothing special about it, and it's pretty poorly executed if you know what I mean. We basically just get Ikarus with his wax wings flying around the sun, and you know, it's basically where it ends. There's nothing special about it, there is no twist on the mythology part of it, it's just portraying what the actual story is. And you know, they could have done more, they could have drawn this in a different medium, they could have done, I don't know, so many things to create a much more memorable and interesting cover, but they just didn't. And I'm saying they not about the band, I'm saying they about the person who made this cover, and I actually don't know who that is. I don't have the information for that, and that's quite unfortunate. But you know what, this album could really use a remaster. It's not that it sounds bad, but I think that it could sound better, and maybe if one day someone would do that, you can make a better cover for the reissue. But as for now, this album is gonna get probably what is to be the highest rating you can get for being a pretty standard progressive rock album, and that is of course a rating of 8 out of 10. But that's about it guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to The Least We Can Do Is Wave at Each Other by the band Van der Graaf Generator. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wanham and Wrist of Kings, you are the best. And if any of you want to support me over there as well, you can check the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it guys, have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.